can tell when a day is going to be bad from the moment you open your eyes, and that morning I just knew. I woke up to the sound of coughing, not my own, but through the walls, deep, hacking, desperate. My neighbor, Mr. Willis, had always been a chain smoker, but lately it sounded less like the wheeze of an old man and more like something choking on its own spit. I lay there listening, counting the hacks like heartbeats, feeling my own chest tighten even though I was healthy. I've always been a creature of habit. Up by 6:30, coffee brewing by 6:35, CNN blaring by 6:40, whether I care about the news or not. It's the only way I know I'm still alive. Routine is life, right? But that morning nothing felt right. My phone alarm didn't go off. The air smelled different, sharp and metallic, like someone had left pennies on every surface. When I peered through my blinds, I saw the military van parked outside the Walgreens at the corner. That thing had been there for 3 days now, just idling. Soldiers getting out to buy Monster Energy and cigarettes, pretending to be regular people. I always wave at them, but none of them ever wave back. Walking out to my mailbox, I tripped over a splatter of something dark, sticky, and drying into the sidewalk in front of my door. My stomach twisted. I wanted to tell myself it was spilled coffee or maybe barbecue sauce from the neighbors, but I'd seen enough blood in my life to know the truth. No one on the block said anything about it. We're the kind of suburb where people walk their dogs and water their lawns like they're paid for it, but lately everyone's been walking a little faster, looking at the ground, pretending not to notice things that shouldn't be there. Even Mrs. Pearson, who lives across the street and is basically the HOA on 2 legs, didn't stop to scold me about my overgrown grass. The more I tried to settle into my day, the worse it got. My phone dropped calls before anyone could say hello. I tried FaceTiming my mom, but her picture kept freezing on a frame where she looked confused and scared, not the tough, unbothered mom I grew up with. She finally texted, "Are you okay? Stay inside." That was it. She always sends at least 5 emojis and a Bible quote, so I knew something was wrong. On TV, every channel had a different story. Local news said there was a gas leak, but the national channels talked about civil unrest and isolated incidents. I called my friend Chris. He didn't pick up. I called again and again until his voicemail got tired of me. That's when the fear started to chew at me. Not panic, just the quiet kind of fear that sits in your throat and waits for you to swallow it. Around noon, the power flickered. The radio played the emergency broadcast beep, but no message came. That's when I realized I was pacing my kitchen, sweating, trying to remember the last time I'd felt normal. I looked out the window and saw Mr. Willis in his backyard, standing too still. He was staring at a squirrel that had frozen halfway up the fence, like they were waiting for each other to move. I'd never seen Mr. Willis stand that way. He always shuffled, always hunched. But now he looked taller, his head cocked to one side, like he was listening to something only he could hear. When I knocked on my window, he jerked around, and for a second I thought I saw his eyes flash the wrong color. But then he waved, just a flick of his fingers, and went back to staring at that squirrel until it finally ran off. I wanted to tell myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just cabin fever. Maybe it was the weird way the world felt lately, like it was holding its breath. But then I saw something else. My neighbor on the other side, Janet, was dragging her trash cans to the curb, and she glanced at Mr. Willis's house with the kind of nervousness you can't fake. She mouthed something, "Lock your doors," and hurried back inside. I started checking my own locks, shutting the windows, pulling the shades. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it was just the coffee. I tried to call Chris again, but now his phone was just dead, not even voicemail. The rest of the day slipped by in a blur of failed calls, nervous glances through blinds, and that growing sense that the world was slipping off its axis. I ate peanut butter straight from the jar and tried to watch Netflix, but nothing loaded. In the evening, the street was too quiet. No kids playing, no cars rolling by, just the wind rattling loose trash cans and that damn military van, still parked with its engine rumbling. The sun went down fast, like someone yanked a blanket over the neighborhood. That's when I heard the noise again. Something scraping, something heavy moving next door. I pressed my ear to the wall and listened, holding my breath. At first, it was just the same coughs, but then there was a wet slurping sound, and the hair on my arms stood up. I could have ignored it. I could have just gone to bed, told myself it was none of my business, but the fear was too sharp now, too loud to ignore. I grabbed my old baseball bat from the closet and checked every lock in the house again. When I finally sat down in the living room, the darkness felt thick, pressing in. Every few minutes I'd hear footsteps in Mr. Willis's yard. Too many footsteps, like more than one person was out there, but nobody else lives with him. I wanted to call the police, but my phone still wouldn't work. And honestly, I wasn't sure what I'd even tell them. My neighbor is acting weird and there's blood on the sidewalk isn't exactly an emergency in this world anymore, is it? I stayed up all night, jumping at every noise, clutching my bat and praying the locks would hold. That was the first night I realized the apocalypse wasn't going to start with a bang or a headline. It was going to slip in through the walls, crawl in under the door, and change the people you thought you knew. And I was sure, absolutely sure, something was off next door. I just didn't know how wrong I was, or how close that wrongness would get. It's amazing how fast the world can go from strange to straight up terrifying. The next morning, I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep. I woke up with my cheek stuck to the arm of the couch, the baseball bat still in my hand, and an ache in my chest from how tight I'd been holding it. Sunlight was already leaking through the blinds, but everything outside looked gray, sickly, like the world had lost its color. Overnight, my mouth was dry and my stomach twisted. I checked my phone. Still nothing. No bars, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. It was like I'd dropped off the planet. I tried to tell myself to act normal, but every sound made me jump. I went through my same routine, brushed my teeth, stared at myself in the mirror, tried to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. The street was deserted, not just quiet. Empty, like every living thing had been scrubbed away. Even the birds were gone. Then I heard it again, that damn cough, but worse this time, almost animal, echoing through the walls. I crept to the kitchen window, heart hammering, and peeked through a crack in the blinds. That's when I saw him. Mr. Willis was standing in his driveway, hunched over like he was about to puke, but he wasn't alone. There was another figure with him, smaller, moving weirdly, like it was too light for its own skin. I realized it was his grandson, Timmy, who was supposed to be staying with his mom in Dallas. The kid looked pale, eyes glassy, mouth hanging open like he couldn't breathe. Mr. Willis reached for the boy, but his fingers curled in a way that wasn't right, too long and stiff. I pressed my hand to the glass, wanting to shout, to run outside, but something held me in place. My heart was beating so fast it made my whole body hurt. Then Timmy let out a scream, a horrible shrieking sound that made the hair on my neck stand up. Mr. Willis jerked around and stared straight at my window. I ducked, stupid and panicked, crashing to the floor with my heart in my throat. For a second I thought he'd seen me, that he knew I was there, but when I looked up again, they were gone, just vanished. The driveway was empty except for a trail of red that led around the side of the house. That's when everything started to break down for real. I tried my phone again, dead. I tried the landline, just static. I opened my laptop and saw the Wi-Fi symbol blinking, like it was searching for something that didn't exist anymore. The TV showed the same emergency message over and over. Please remain indoors. Await further instructions. No one said what the emergency was. There were sirens in the distance, but they never got closer. When I banged on the walls and yelled for Mr. Willis, nobody answered. I started texting everyone I knew, but nobody replied. My friend Chris's phone was still dead. Janet across the street didn't open her blinds all day. It felt like the world was shrinking, folding in on itself, and I was the only one awake to see it happen. That night, I tried to stay awake, but exhaustion got me. When I woke up, the sky outside was dark, cloudy, no moon. That's when I heard something slam against my back door, hard. I grabbed the bat and crept to the kitchen, every muscle in my body ready to snap. I peeked through the curtain and saw a shape pressed against the glass, hands smearing something wet and red down the door. For a second, I thought it was a burglar or some desperate neighbor, but then I saw the face. Gray, sunken, with eyes like little lights flickering in the dark. It was Timmy. But not Timmy. His mouth hung open wider than it should have, lips pulled back so far I could see every tooth. He slammed his head against the door again, leaving a crack in the glass, and I stumbled back, nearly dropping the bat. Suddenly, there was another noise from the side yard, more footsteps, shuffling, scraping. I heard Janet screaming from across the street, and then it cut off so fast it made my blood run cold. I knew I had to do something. I slammed every lock I could find, dragged furniture in front of the doors, jammed a kitchen chair under the handle. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the bat. I kept thinking, this can't be happening, this isn't real. But it was. I could hear it. I could smell it. The whole house stank like sweat and fear and old blood. The scraping got louder, like someone or something was circling the house, testing every door, every window. I tried to turn on the lights, but nothing happened. Power was out. The only thing left was the dull glow of my phone screen, useless and mocking. I crouched in the hallway, heart slamming in my chest, listening to the sound of nails or claws tapping against the window glass. I was sure I'd see a hand reach through or a face pressed against the glass, but nothing happened for hours. It was like they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I kept thinking about Mr. Willis, how he'd changed, how he'd looked at me with those empty, hungry eyes. It wasn't infection. It wasn't some disease. It was something else, something inside them that wasn't supposed to be there. The rules were different now. People didn't die, they just changed, and the change was spreading, fast, right under our noses. I wanted to call for help, but there was no one left to call. By the time the sun started to rise, I knew I couldn't stay. Not in that house. Not on this street. Not with my neighbors turning into things that wanted to get in. I shoved whatever food I could find into a backpack, found a flashlight that barely worked, and looked around one last time. My home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a trap, a cage with paper-thin walls. I didn't even say goodbye to the place. I just walked out the back door, keeping low, the bat in my hand, and started moving down the alley, heart pounding, not knowing where I was going. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I could hear the sounds, footsteps, wet breathing, the scrape of something sharp on the asphalt, following me, getting closer with every step. And that's when I realized this wasn't about infection. It was about something older, something wrong, moving through people like wildfire, burning out everything human inside them. And the worst part was, nobody was ready. Not me, not my friends, not the world. The apocalypse didn't explode. It crept in, and by the time you noticed, it was already too late.